So my name is Tometta Cozart, and I serve as the Multicultural Outreach and Health Equity Director for the Epilepsy Foundation of America. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. I was going to say this afternoon, but now again with all of these time zones, it's a lot of different times a day for a lot of different people. So we're happy for all of you to be here with us. And so, as you know, November is Epilepsy Awareness Month, and this is an opportunity for us to have a discussion about Seizure Dog. And so we want to make sure people are aware of the aspect of being able to utilize seizure dogs as an opportunity to consider your public safety, and also just the aspect of your comfort and part of your epilepsy journey. But we know that it can be difficult to understand exactly how to access such a program to be able to help you to get such a dog, and some of the challenges or barriers that may come to that. So this is an opportunity for us to have a discussion about those things. We do not have any clinicians with us today, so we will not be talking specifically about any aspects of specific epilepsy in terms of a medical or a clinical standpoint. But we will be talking about the aspect of the programmatic side in terms of access to dogs and things to consider if this is something that you think you want to know more about. So, with nearly 50,000 searches in this past year, seizure dogs is the #1 searched topic related to public safety when it comes to the Epilepsy Foundation's information and referral services. And so we know this is a very highly anticipated webinar. We had over 200 registrants, and we're just so excited about that. But we know we may not be able to get to everyone's questions, and we may not be able to answer consider everyone's needs. And so this will be recorded so that people can listen to it later, but you also are able to send this recording to others who may be able to give you more specific information when it comes to programming in your state, or being able to, again, link up to your local epilepsy affiliate to be able to ask them questions about support and assistance in this regard as well. This particular program is in sponsorship of IZI, and so their Magnolia Paws for Compassion program is the program that we will be highlighting today. It is not the only program where you can obtain a seizure dog, but it is the one that we will be highlighting today. And so we're extremely grateful for their sponsorship and support. But this particular content of the webinar does not reflect the views of that particular organization. And then a couple of housekeeping reminders, again, for the aspect of questions to the speakers, please do use the question and answer function that helps me to be able to read your particular question and know exactly who to direct it to. It also allows us to be able to go back to the question if we start talking about something else and then we need to come back to it later. It also helps to the fact that if we run out of time, then you can make sure that those questions will get to them and then they can try to answer those and get that back to you. I want to reiterate the fact that we won't be giving any specific medical advice. And I know that some of you have very specific questions around the aspect of your type of epilepsy and your type of seizures. And unfortunately, we just won't be able to speak to that today. But again, as it's being recorded, please feel free to share this recording once it's available to you with your particular medical provider or your care team. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and introduce our panelists today, which we are so thankful to have them with us. Today, we're going to make sure that, again, we're raising awareness around public safety opportunities of those who are living with epilepsy, and knowing that having a seizure dog is just one aspect of that. But we do want people to learn and listen about how seizure dogs do assist people who are living with epilepsy. We want to make sure we talk about the specific aspect of how For Paws for Ability does participate in this particular program in terms of making sure that dogs are available. And then we do want to highlight the fact that, again, Paws for Compassion is the specific program that we're going to be highlighting. So first, we're going to hear from Eliana Wade, and she's 18 years old. She's a communication student at Hope College, where she is currently. I'm sure you can see that in the background, that she is currently at college. And she was diagnosed with epilepsy when she was just 11 months old, and her seizures remained uncontrolled until the age of 10. And so during that time, she was matched with a service dog named Remy, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Remy and get to see pictures of Remy, who has been her loyal companion and vital helper since then. And so for the past 3 years, Eliana has been an active volunteer with Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan. She contributes to their camps, their Stroll for Epilepsy events, and she's also participated in Teen Speak Up, which is an initiative in Washington, D.C., where she actually gets to advocate for herself and others like her with decision makers. She's used her experience with epilepsy to advocate for inclusion and to raise awareness about living with epilepsy while sharing her story with others. And so we're so grateful to have her here with us today so that she can do the same with not just the aspect of us, but all of her peers as well. So her mother, Shannon Wade, is an employee of the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan, and she serves as their senior manager of education and outreach. She brings a wealth of knowledge and personal experience to her role. And as a mother of a young adult living with epilepsy, she offers a unique perspective and heartfelt perspective on the impact of epilepsy on families. She also has an extensive background in healthcare, public relations, outreach, nonprofit work, and all of that has equipped her in terms of how she leads the educational programming, including the seizure recognition and first aid training, conferences, and camps that she all manages as a part of being Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan. So we're going to hear from the two of them first about their perspective in terms of actually obtaining a dog and how Remy has helped and support their family. But then Shannon will also be able to give some insight into the aspect of working with an affiliate. How do they actually help other families be able to be connected to such resources? After we hear from the two of them, we're going to hear from Jessa Kenworthy, and she is with Paws for Ability, and she serves as their training director. And so she oversees the advanced training and client programs to ensure that their service dogs are trained in the aspect of behavior and the ability to perform life-saving tasks. So she's been with the organization for almost 16 years, and she's overjoyed to take part in being able to place dogs with families all over the country. And interestingly enough, Jessa actually helped Shannon be able to obtain Remy for Eliana. So this has come full circle that they're able to share their experiences, not just with us, but also with each other in terms of seeing the evolution of this program. So thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate all of you for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Eliana and Shannon.
Well, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be with all of you here today. I got a little bit of emotional listening to all of that. Just it is full circle and it's beautiful. And one thing I hope it encourages you to do is have hope. I remember when we first started our journey, we were just looking for hope, right? Whether that was different medical physicians, whether that was different medications or treatments, different devices. And when we started, it was several years ago. So there wasn't a lot out there. And that kind of brought us to our search for maybe a service dog or a seizure dog would be a good fit for our family. And with a lot of research, and we've come long way as far as what Google can share with us, right? But I did a lot of research, and then I found Four Paws for Ability, which happens to be not too awfully far from us. I think it was 4 to 6 hours away from us. And part of that journey was just getting to know if this was the right fit for our family, if a service dog could potentially be what we were looking for and be able to provide some services. So super excited to share a little bit about that experience. But part of the things that we considered when we were getting Remy, he was also just side note, because I think this is fun. So all of the classes at Four Paws are kind of themed or named, and he was part of the rock star group. And so his original name was Bo Diddley. He had siblings like Etta James, and Zeppelin, which was super fun. But part of our journey was just trying to figure out how this was going to work. Especially, I am a person who has allergies, severe allergies to dogs. So I was like, how is this going to work out? But I'll tell you, the first moment that we were able to engage with Remy, actually, that's a photo right there that you're seeing on the very top. That's Eliana meeting Remy for the very first time. And the first time I saw Remy do his job, it wasn't specifically for Eliana, it was for another student that was at the facility during our training time. it changed everything for me. That hope just reappeared, and I'm just so grateful to kind of share a little bit about that. Eliana was actually quite young at the time. She was about 6 years old when we received Remy. So, Elle, I don't know if you have any thoughts to or remember a whole lot of that experience.
Yeah, the experience itself, I don't remember too much besides being really excited to meet him, but also terrified. I remember going up to his cage and being too scared to touch him at first because it didn't seem real. It didn't seem like something that was attainable, but here he was, and he provided so much love and comfort and support throughout the years. And yeah,
Just so grateful. Yeah. And I think part
yeah.
of the journey of trying to figure out if this was what was right for our family was trying to make sure that we were connected to an organization that gave us some supports and kind of helped us along that journey. For Paws for Ability did just that. Some of the things that are important to think about is school, right? You see a photo there of Eliana at school with her dog. I just working in this community, there's some barriers to school, right? And so we have to think about those things. That was one of them. And then also, one thing I will say that I didn't think about, which I wish I would have a little bit more, and maybe this would be helpful to you, is when suddenly you have a service dog with you all the time. A lot of people want to know a lot of things. They all have questions. They all want to pet him. They all want to be present and with him, right? Which is wonderful because dogs are great. But also, if you have a child who's sick, or maybe you're a person who has, other disabilities as well, that can be another pressure or another thing to consider. So one thing I would also encourage is as you're on that journey to potentially receiving a service dog or starting that process, um, I I hope it's okay to say this, but I feel like we almost have an obligation that this is our time to be educators and advocate on behalf of the disability community in whole, because people are going to ask questions and they're going to want to know. So there's going to be right times that we will want to share, but then there's also going to be times, especially during medical emergencies, where we're not going to have the capacity to share. And I think that was a little bit overwhelming to me in the beginning, just because a lot of people within our community, of course, knew Remy was coming and had already done the education and understood what epilepsy was. But when you're out and about, right, at the stores, at the movies, at church, that type of thing, there's a lot of questioning about what that is. So that is definitely one thing I would consider having conversation about with your family who are going to be supporting you, is what that looks like and how you're going to do that, and also to be prepared to do that. And I think some simple ways of being prepared are going through the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan, connecting with your local chapters. So that way you have the education and knowledge to be able to share that information properly and with information that is current. Because I think for me, I started this process with Eliana. Prior to being connected to the foundation. And boy, oh boy, I wish that would have been different. I wish that would have been flip side, because I would have been able to talk through some of these things prior to getting a service dog. So that's a little bit about that. As far as why did we become an advocate for people living with epilepsy and assistance dogs, and Elle, I think you can kind of speak to this a little bit more as well. Advocacy has kind of been part of our family's journey forever, even before epilepsy. So this was not a new thing for us to advocate, but service dogs was definitely new to us. And Eliana is, you may have heard in her bio, right? She's done some volunteer work, and we've done volunteer work outside of the foundation. So advocacy is a big part of that. Elle, is there anything specifically like you can think of where you've had to use your skills because of obtaining a service dog in those environments? I know I'm throwing you on the spot here.
Yeah, I really think just communication, as you said, like advocacy. Having a service dog does lend with you having to speak on that. So I feel like it led to a lot of times me being at school and the topic of me having a service dog bring is brought up, and having to educate people on that topic and being able to provide them with information they didn't know. A lot of people believe that service dogs are really only with people who can't see as well. And so, like, with that, like, to help take away the stigmatization, like, "Oh, no, I can see. don't have, sight loss, I have epilepsy," and to be able to educate, I feel like that's a very big role of advocacy with service dogs, is to let people know about the different types of service dogs and the amazing things they can do. Because so many people downplay the ability of service dogs, but it is so enlightening to be able to tell people, "No, they can do so much more than you think."
Yeah, that's so true too. And I will tell you, from our personal experience, Remy changed our lives. As a mom who couldn't sleep in a different room than her daughter for the first probably 7 years of her life, once we got Remy home after all the training and after them getting to know really each other well in that bond, building that bond, we got to the point where Eliana was able to sleep in her own room. And one of the most beautiful things is for the first time I was able to also sleep, but Remy was able to notify us when a seizure was happening. And, I think that as a parent, number one, you have a child with a disability. Number two, you're sleep deprived. Right? Let's just say it. We are sleep deprived. We're just looking for a cure, looking for answers, looking for something to help and assist. And for us, that's what Remy was. He was able to do things that we didn't even know he could do, actually. And Jessa, I'm sure, is probably going to talk a little bit more about that training process. But Remy was trained in a lot of things when we received him, and we had to continue. This is something I also think it's important to know is you get your seizure dog or service dog or and you take this dog home, but there still is responsibility after that. And I think that's something that sometimes we don't think about prior to. You still have to work on training techniques, right? And different things, especially as a person's epilepsy might change, right? Maybe they have a new epilepsy type, that type of thing. So we just have to be constantly working on that. I think that was actually a little bit more than I expected when we brought Remy home. I felt like there was homework every day, but it was us getting to know him getting to know us. And by the end, I mean, Remy could do pretty amazing things. And I know that's not everybody's experience with the service dog. But for us, that was part of our journey. And I also attest that to the fact that we were really strategic in choosing Paws for ability because of their proven track record as far as, and hate to say proven track record, but there's a lot of care that goes into that. And, there are a lot of different organizations out there. Many people sometimes, train their own dogs, and I think I've seen good and bad in all of those things, which is lovely. But yeah, there's a lot of things to think about. So educating, folks, I think that's going to be really important to know. Also, just what does your school, if this is for a student, what does your school, what are those expectations on the school? What will they assist with? We were very, very fortunate. We had a teacher who came alongside of us and was Eliana's teacher for the first 2 years of Remy being with her, and she welcomed him into the classroom. And really beautiful story, but she basically said, this was my best 2 years of teaching ever, is having him part of our community, right? So I think that's really important as well. One of the questions we've been asked to also offer is, what do people think about living with epilepsy? What is that issue with access to a service dog? And I'll speak to this a little bit more, and Elle, you could, I know, share about this a little bit more. But when we began our process and we filled out all the applications from start to finish, it took us about 2 years to obtain Remy from the time we started our process through the fundraising efforts. But one thing that we found is that community cares, and there's a lot of people who you don't even know yet who want to support efforts like this because they also believe in what a service dog can do for a person. But also, um, just in thinking about that care aspect, right? Um, some of the access points, though, because of the cost, I think that's something that Four Paws does really well, actually. They give you a lot of resources when you're going through that process of how you can become a good fundraiser, right? Because this does take more than just one person. You can't just cut a check for a service dog. It doesn't, and well, most people can't, I should say. So one thing that I've loved is watching communities come together and support those efforts. Elle, would you like to share a little bit about some of the fundraising that we did? What did that look like to you as a child? Because I know from my aspect, what I saw is not only a community coming together to help you, but also a community coming together to learn more about what epilepsy is and what a service dog could do. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, for me, especially like looking back about specifically how I felt during the time, I just remember feeling very loved. Like, no matter where I turned, there was someone talking to me, especially at the events. We did two major events that I can remember. We did a pig roast and a bowling fundraiser, and I just remember I had the time of my life at both of them. I remember just feeling so loved no matter where I went, someone was like talking to me. Someone was asking me questions. I excited to get my dog? And obviously, yeah, I was super excited. It was a dog. I wanted nothing more than a dog. And so the community, even now that I'm older, I realize how important the community is. And looking back, the community that was built because of these events has even lasted now. The people who cared about me then care about me now. And people would constantly ask, "Oh, how's your service dog doing?" The, to this day, people ask how he's doing. And it's just a very beautiful thing because even if they may not know everything about me, they learned about epilepsy through learning about my dog, and that was very impactful. Especially now, like looking back, now that I'm older and reflecting on that, it made me realize how important community was. And community is so important. I'm very lucky to be involved in the epilepsy community, and it's a community that is full of so much love. And I think, yeah.
Think so. Yeah, and it's just another thing to reiterate too, because I do see in the comments, and this was one of my biggest things too. So in the comments, we're talking about cost, right? Um, I think that's probably one of the first things and the first reasons people shy away from considering a service dog. And maybe Jessa will be speaking about this a little bit more, but really there are a lot of tools out there and there's not a timeline. I will say as a mom, there is a timeline, right? Because we just need hope. We need something to help in that current situation. So for me personally, there was a timeline. And in my head, I thought, oh my goodness, I was like, I don't want to wait 4 years. I don't want to wait 5 years. What can we do to make this happen faster, because we needed that desperately at that time. And that's when I called in the troops. I called in my closest friends and family and said, here's what our goal is. How can you help? And you know what? That's a hard thing to do. But we were in a very vulnerable time where our journey was so uncertain and her epilepsy was so sporadic and all over. We didn't have a lot of answers at that time. And we had physicians saying, you know what, maybe this is something to explore, which was really encouraging as well. So yeah, it really just depends on your situation and how hard you're willing to move towards that, and just know that you're not alone in that. News stations, I mean, there are so many communicate or communities out there who want to assist, whether it be, college students doing a fundraiser for you. And we did have more than one or two events. We had two major events, and then we had multiple fundraisers going on beyond that. So yeah, and for us also, just so you can kind of get a glimpse of what Remy was able to do, because this is something people are curious about, right? It took him some time. It didn't happen overnight when we brought him home, but he was able to alert prior to a seizure for us. The thing is we have to be willing to listen for that too, because it's not always with a bark. Sometimes it's with a sniff, sometimes with a different behavior that he's doing. So that's something that I think is important to know, that you're going to also have to be on alert still. Just because you have a service dog doesn't take that away, but it does lessen some of those fears and anxieties around that. But he also was able to tell us a little bit before a seizure happened. And one thing that was really beneficial and great, and we worked with the trainers specifically on this, is when Eliana would have a tonic-clonic grand mal seizure, he was actually able to turn her on her side, which was a huge gift for us because that was one of our fears. So he did many other things. We have tons of funny stories, especially once he started going to school. tons of funny stories. But he has been such a beautiful piece to our family. And unfortunately, Remy lived for 13 years. So he passed away just a few months ago, which was a hard thing to handle. Eliana's currently controlled right now, so we don't see another service dog in our future right now. She has kind of briefly talked about possibly fostering, which is something, that is still out on the table, to help bring another service dog to somebody else's family. But yeah, I think that is probably all I have to share right now. Elle, do you have any last words or any thoughts?
I don't believe I do, but
Thanks, Sis.
you said, yeah.
All right, Tamara.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys being able to share that and these beautiful pictures. And I see a lot of questions in the chat, but I want to make sure that Jessa has an opportunity to tell us more specifics about her program, that training that we talked about, and then just some aspects of some considerations in terms of if you do think that this is something that you want to pursue. So Jessa.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm so glad to see everybody here. It's definitely a very exciting topic and, has a lot of, once again, hope and, joy that the dogs bring into people's lives. So just so excited to share about that. So as I speak, I'm going to be speaking obviously from the point of view of the service dog organization I work for, which is For Paws for Ability, which is one of the many service dog organizations out there, as well as one of the many that provide service dogs for medical alert, be it seizures or diabetes, or even PTSD or other things. So a lot of what I say is once again coming from that perspective. It doesn't mean that there are organizations out there that do it differently or that would provide to different people who have needs. So just so that everyone is all aware with that. So at Four Paws, our primary placements are with children with disabilities. We do have a small veterans program, but the majority of our placements are with children. We place about 120 service dogs a year, and we actually just this past Friday graduated our 2000th team since we became an organization in 1995, which is a very huge, exciting thing that we have achieved, and we're just very excited about that. So while we place a lot of service dogs with children that have epilepsy or other seizure disorders, we also place with children with other types of disabilities. We have several different types of service dogs that we provide. We have behavior intervention service dogs, which may do tasks that range from behavior intervention skills to help calm and mitigate a meltdown or help to calm and soothe, search and rescue for those who might elope, and tethering to help prevent elopement. We have our medical alert, which is for typically our seizure alert and our diabetic alert. We have mobility assistance dogs, which provides support with, picking up dropped items, turning on and off lights, opening and closing doors, getting the handicap button, helping with clothes, pulling a wheelchair out, all sorts of various things like that. As well as we also have hearing ear dogs, which are taught to alert to sounds and let the person who has hearing loss know when certain sounds are happening and potentially source those sounds for them, like bring them to a door if someone's knocking on the door. Our dogs are all specifically trained to the individual. So that might mean that you have a service dog who's not only doing medical alert, but there may be also supporting with tracking and tethering for a disability such as Dravet syndrome, where you often see a lot of autism type tendencies. So we provide all sorts of different things. Our dogs are all bred on site and placed with families. We have them through the entirety of the dog's life, and they're trained throughout that life. We are not an organization that works with placed dogs in people's homes already, but there are definitely organizations out there that do that. Our organization trains mainly golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers, a mix of the two, the golden retriever and the Labrador retriever, poodles, standard poodles, a mix of golden retriever and standard poodle, as well as in very kind of small, not only in body, but small situations, we will also place with Papillons, which is a toy breed. And these are once again all dogs that we have bred on site. There's nothing magical about these breeds as a generalization. Many other organizations use other breeds. These are just the ones that we have found to be the most successful for us and our goals and what we are trying to achieve with the dog. Doesn't mean that any dog can be a service dog and any dog can do amazing things. We just focus on those breeds because they're the ones that we have been working with for many, many years and have a great breeding program with. As far as getting a service dog through Four Paws for Ability, there's an application process where you go online to our website, fourpawsforability.org, and you fill out an application. There's aspects of that application that will need to be submitted, like some letters of reference and a note from your doctor. After all the application pieces have been put in, then it is a matter of doing a phone interview, which you'll talk to one of our client specialists, and they will work with you on, kind of just talking through what are your needs? What do you think a service dog can do for, your child? And kind of work with you on how can we can best meet those needs with a service dog and get you to get kind of what we call the contracted tasks, which are the specific things the dog is going to do for you. Now, within medical alert for seizure alert dog, the things that we train is a pre-alert, which Shannon and Ellie talked about a little bit, where Remy would let them know ahead of time when a seizure is coming, as well as a alert during an actual seizure when it is happening. And this is something that if the dog can notice it and pick it up, it has to be something that is a little bit more obvious to a dog. A lot of times things like a focal seizure where we just kind of maybe lose a little bit of focus, kind of stare off, that doesn't necessarily to a dog look much different than if we were to just, be hanging out and thinking about something. So it has to be something that is a bit more obvious, that would be a bit more obvious to a dog. And then there are other aspects that a lot of families will get that are similar to it. They might need balance and stability support because after a seizure, the partner is, kind of off balance and struggles with that. So the dog can help with that. We might have the dog retrieve a medical bag with medical supplies on it so that the parent can stay with the child during the seizure while the dog goes and retrieves the necessary medicines. And then, of course, once again, there's that aspect of being able to work across multiple needs and multiple disabilities and be able to have a dog fine-tuned to those needs. So if medical alert is something that is needed, as well as mobility tasks, or as well as search and rescue tasks, or hearing air tasks, or whatever that case may be. Once again, our dogs are all specifically trained for the person that they are working towards. Um, Once you get through that interview and you get our tasks selected, then we go into the fundraising stage. At Four Paws for Ability, our service dogs cost around $40,000 to fully train, from birth all the way through till placement. We ask our families to join us in fundraising $20,000, so half of that cost. The rest of that cost we are getting from donations and grants that we receive from other people to kind of offset the total cost and cover that entire cost of the dog. Now, this is something that, once again, we don't expect that a lot of families are going to be able to just sign a check for $20,000. They are welcome to, but most families do have to fundraise within their community. I think Shannon did a great job speaking to that and kind of the different aspects of that, so I don't want to take much of your time on that piece. But as the fundraising is going on, Four Paws is there to help support you with different ideas and links and things like that to kind of help support that fundraising process. Once that fundraising process is done, you're placed in one of our classes. We have about a 2-year wait once that fundraising is done, between then and then when you will come to class to receive your dog. That portion of time is so that we can breed and train and raise that dog for your needs. So while certainly we don't have it quite as set up at this point to where a puppy is born and from that first day we're able to say this puppy is going to this person, we do specifically breed the dogs knowing the type of families that we have that are coming for placements, that far out. And then as the dogs get older, we will earmark them for specific types of tasks. And then before they enter advanced training, we have selected them for a specific family. So once they enter that final stage of training, they are getting all their specifics regarding the family that they're going to and the person that they are going to help. The puppy's kind of journey from birth until placement involves multiple steps. As I said, they're in training from birth, and we have a lot of things that we do with the puppies, even from a couple days old, getting them comfortable with being handled and the different smells as puppies can feel and smell right from when they are born. Once they can start hearing and seeing, we're starting to introduce them to different sights and sounds that are going to be things that they're going to be experiencing throughout their lives and as they work towards a service dog. And a lot of our dogs, once they have reached an age where they've weaned, they will go either to one of our prison programs where we have inmates work with the dogs and teach them basic manners, house train them, and just teach them basic obedience before they come out of prison, and then they go into a foster home where that person will raise the dog. Their focus is on socialization, taking the dog with them to places in public that would be positive for the dog, that they get that used to kind of being in public and being around malls and stores and schools and all sorts of various things that are going to be likely for the dog to experience during their life as a service dog, so that they have the confidence needed to be able to focus on their job in those scenarios, rather than being overwhelmed or overexcited in those type of environments. Then once again, the dogs come into advanced training. In advanced training, they're taught all their specific skills, so that's where we teach them that medical alert. That process involves getting the dogs a really positive association with the scent that we want them to alert to and having a really high value reward. So pretty much we're essentially telling them every time you smell the smell, you're gonna have a huge reward. It would be like if I told you every time you smell a vanilla candle, I'm gonna give you $100. And pretty quickly, you're gonna be like, oh, look, there's a vanilla candle. Where's my $100? So it's kind of the similar thing for the dongs where we create that association and then we teach them then a behavior that we want them to perform when they notice that smell. So in our metaphor with the vanilla candle, it would be, having you come up to me and hold your hand out saying, I smelled a candle. And then I would know that you've done that, and then I would give you your $100. For the dogs, we teach a bark alert so that that can be heard at anywhere within the house. As many of the children who are getting our service dogs are having seizures at night, and the dog is sleeping with them at night. Shannon talked about that a little bit, that comfort and knowing that they had Remy there to help support them and to help watch for those nighttime seizures. And so this is why we do a bark alert, because you can hear a dog barking even if you're in a different room. And then once we get that training all complete, the families come to class. The class lasts for 10 days, and during that class, they're taught how to handle their service dog, not only the specific tasks that the dog has been trained to perform and being able to support that, but just everything dog, because for some of these families, this is the first time they've ever owned a dog. And so we want to make sure that they have all the information and feel very confident taking that dog home, not only as a new family member and a service dog, but also as a dog, because at the end of the day, these guys are really well trained service dogs, but they're still dogs. So they're still going to do dog things. I know they mentioned a little bit some funny stories. So things like that happen because at the end of the day, these are dogs, and we have to understand and appreciate that that is the case with them as well. And Four Paws provides a lot of support once going home through weekly check-ins that turn into monthly check-ins, as well as annual recertifications to ensure that those that are placed with the dog with us are always supported and have what they need to be able to be successful with their team. And I think that kind of takes through the whole process.
Yes, it does. Thank you so very much. I appreciate all three of you being able to provide insight to your lived experience and journey, but then also the aspect of exactly how training occurs. There's been quite a few questions that have come in the chat, and I'm going to try to go back and get as many of them as I can. And any of you who want to chime in are more than welcome to do so. Jessa, I know that you mentioned the fact that you train mainly golden retrievers, but can any dog actually be trained as a service dog, or is it just certain breeds that lend more to being able to be trained than others?
Yeah, absolutely. Any dog can be a service dog. A service dog is defined by the ADA as a dog who is task trained to mitigate a disability. So within the ADA, it does not specify anything breed related. What we do find at Four Paws, one of the reasons that we use the breeds that we use is that they are very people forward. They really love people. They love attention. They love interactions. They really bond well to family members. And also when people are out and about and they see dogs, you know, the ones that people see, some people have fears and nervousness related to dogs. And sometimes there is unfortunately some breed stigmas like pit bulls or Rottweilers or Shepherds that people just aren't as well educated on those breeds and so might be a little bit more hesitant when if they were to see a service dog of that breed. So while they make amazing and wonderful service dogs and there's no difference between them and their ability to do so, we do utilize these breeds partially, in fact, because it makes it easier for our families with access because they are less likely to be stopped and questioned about that dog as a service dog. When it is some of those breeds that are a little bit more, I guess I would say, expected to be service dogs. And once again, I've seen plenty of service dogs who are not that breed who do amazing, wonderful jobs. And there's any dog can be a service dog as far as breed concerns. It is way more about that dog's temperament and personality and their ability to perform trained tasks.
Thank you, Jessa. One of the other questions that came up was around the aspect of a dog that you already have. So you did not obtain that dog through an actual service. It's a dog that you actually have. Can that dog be trained to then be able to help you in terms of alerting your particular seizures? Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say once again at Four Paws, that is not something that we do. All of our dogs are placed that we breed and train ourselves, but there are organizations out there that 100% work with families with dogs that they already own. There is a pretty heavy duty assessment attached to it before they will start working with that dog because they want to make sure that the dog is going to be able to work in public both with their manners and their just personality and also their comfort level. We don't want to put a dog in a situation where they were, fearful and or uncomfortable being in public. So, assuming that that assessment is completed in such a way that that agency feels that they are comfortable working with this dog, then they would begin that training process with working with that dog. That might entail that they simply are just teaching you how to do the training, or it might mean that they have you coming in and then they work with the dog. And then there's all sorts of kind of combinations and in between with different agencies. I would say the best resource for finding an agency to meet your various needs, whether it is with placing a dog that they have raised and trained and placed with you, or working with you and a dog that you already have. ADI Assistance Dogs International is the best resource for finding a service dog agency in your area that is going to meet your specific needs, whether it's, once again, I have a dog. I would love this dog. Maybe they already naturally alert, but I would like to be able to get them going in public with me as a service dog for this task that they're already doing.
Thank you so much. Another aspect of what has come up has been around the aspect of, um, again, as we know, funding, right? So being able to consider alternative ways in terms of being able to afford a dog. So has, Shannon, in terms of even the work that you do with the Epilepsy Foundation in Michigan, have you found that there's been any, agencies or companies or insurance organizations that help with being able to cover any of the costs or support around being able to afford the dog?
Yeah. This is a tricky one, right? When it comes to funding a service dog, I don't know that there's anybody out there who's going to willingly just say, here you go. Insurances don't cover this for the most part. there are grants available to some. You would have to do a lot of research to find grants in your area if you know how to write for a grant. But there are, there are organizations, the Elks, the Lions, like these types of clubs, a lot of church communities. Um, there's schools, right? Schools and colleges, sororities, fraternities. Those are the types of people that we lean on. And actually, when I get calls about this is kind of where I point them, is into this direction, because it's usually those service-based organizations that really want to come alongside of you and walk that journey with you to see that through. And one thing I would also encourage is, just because the cost, trust me, I know when we started this process, my husband and I had to have a sit down, and I was like, I don't even know how this is possible, but I knew that I had to fight for it because I needed some sort of hope and reassurance. And everything that we had at that time, the treatments were not working, and I needed some sort of support. And a live-in aid wasn't something that I could afford either. So we just kind of put our minds together and said, who do we know? What community can we reach out to say, hey, you're in this circle or you're in this circle. Who do you know that might be able to possibly, assist us? So there is a lot of people out there who are very generous. I'll tell you that we had people show up. We did a garage sale, and it was kind of like name your price. And, you think about doing something like that, and that can be overwhelming. People were so generous and kind. Even weeks later, we would have people stopping by our house, dropping off money because, they saw that. We actually had a girl who stopped by after seeing the event. She put a little bucket up at her Coney Island and collected funds and brought that to us. So people really do want to be part of this journey. There are some amazing people out there. And I as much as I want to say, like, don't let cost be the only factor, I don't think it can be the only factor. It really depends on your specific needs. Because I will say this too, right? With all this, Jessa kind of mentioned, like, after you go home with your service dog, there's still things that you have to follow up on. You have your appointments for the dog. You have to kind of still be in communication with For Paws for Ability because they want to check on that dog and that relationship. And I'll be honest, when you have a sick child, those are just other tasks that get added to the to-do list, and those can be exhausting. I'm very honest in this conversation because I wish I would have realized that. Would I have changed anything? Absolutely not. I think it's worth pushing towards. So be encouraged. There are people out there, and I'm happy to have conversations about different ways to do it. We have social media now. If you can get people who are on social media to do a TikTok or to start a Facebook page. Facebook was fairly new when we started this process. It was a huge place that we shared education. There are a lot of people out there who want to support you.
Thank you, Shannon. And of course, again, we're doing this during November as Epilepsy Awareness Month. And so being able to consider tying into epilepsy awareness days and different activities also may help you. So being
Yes.
connected to your local epilepsy foundation, if you're not, those are things that you can consider. Like, for example, in March, we have coming up Epilepsy Awareness Day, right? And so that's an international day. And a lot of people will be focused on epilepsy during that period of time as well. So we have rare disease days in the end of February, so if you have a rare epilepsy, so considering using some of those particular national observances to be able to tie to your efforts as well.
Yeah.
So.
And Tamara, I'll just speak on that a little bit. Our first time, like, kind of sharing with the community that we were doing this, it was for Purple Day. It was our very first Purple Day experience. I made 500 purple cupcakes, sent them to school, sent packets home with students. They all made friendship bracelets at the school that were purple, just because, it doesn't take just one person, it takes a community. And I think that's a really great resource. Don't be afraid to ask your schools, either their PTO types, like people like that as well.
Another question we had was about just talking a little bit more about resources specifically for adults. And so there seems to be more opportunity for children who want dogs, veterans who want dogs. But if you're an adult and you don't fit in that category, there's still as many resources for you to be able to get a dog as well.
Jessa had mentioned
Yeah.
something just earlier. It was Assistance Dogs International. I think that's such a great resource. You know, your Four Paws for a cause or Paws with a Cause. There's a lot of different organizations out there that may be able to assist. So I think reaching out to the organizations, even if they're only serving children or veterans, reaching out to them is also beneficial because they're going to be able to give you some feedback and some resources.
Jessa, did you want to mention something as well, or that's exactly what you were going to say?
Exactly. That was exactly it.
Wonderful. And then in terms of that follow-up, Shannon, as you mentioned, the fact that even once you get the dog, the organization you get, still wants to be involved. Of course, there's so many dog lovers on, a lot of people were touched when you said that Remy has gone ahead and transitioned. And so when that happens, what happens? What does a family do if their dog actually does transition?
Yeah. So within our class, I think we had about 7 families within our class. And a few of those have had their dog pass sooner than ours. I think ours was actually the last dog with us. And I've kind of watched them go through that process, depending on the situation and the reasons and all of that type of thing and the need, right? So some families may decide like, okay, this was exactly what we needed. We're going to pursue getting another dog, working with another organization. And Jesse, you might be able to speak to that a little bit more specifically to Four Paws. But usually it's kind of, I don't want to say starting the process over. It's continuing that process with an organization is usually what that looks like. So for us, we're just at a place in time where we don't necessarily feel like that is our first priority because Eliana is well managed and she's been seizure free right now. So grateful for that. And to be quite honest, the reason we chose to get Remy is because we were told that would never come. And so that being told that or knowing that or having such a difficult 6 or 7 or 8 years, we just knew we had to do something. So my encouragement for you would be, your child the best. You're going to fight for that. You're going to advocate for that. So just kind of go with your gut a little bit and trust the organization that you're going with. I can't speak to that enough right there. Trust the organization that you're going with. They will guide you along the path, right? Of getting that dog. Here's fundraising opportunities. Here's some local people that you might be able to connect with who maybe can provide certain things or they help with discounted, locations or providing you with buttons or that type of thing. So, Jessa, anything to add?
Yeah. So specific to Four Paws for Ability, we have many families who come in for another dog, a successor dog, as we call them. And as the first dog was able to really help and provide some really great support for them, and they feel that that's still something that they, need that support from a dog. So for those families, once again, it's a very similar process, but it's simpler, it's more streamlined. Essentially, we're just getting an update from them on kind of what the current kind of state of affairs is. Have there been any changes in potentially our diagnosed disabilities or the frequency of medical events that are occurring? They do have to fundraise again, but they only have to fundraise half the cost. So that's 10,000 with Four Paws rather than the 20,000 that is the current fundraiser. And we're just once again we're still filling that gap. The dog still costs 40,000. We are just providing, through our own fundraising and grants and things like that, filling in more of that gap for our returning families than we are for our families who are joining us for their first service dog. We encourage a lot of our families, if they know they're going to want a successor dog, to start that process 2-3 years prior to when they think their current dog is going to need to retire so that they can have a nice, easy transition between one dog to another. That allows often the older dog to kind of step in and be a mentor and kind of teach the new dog the ropes, and kind of how the process works. Unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't always work out and happen as, we can't know the future of any of us, much less dogs. And sometimes, they might get sick and pass before we expect. And we do our best to preference our families in coming to class. If there's openings, we will move our returning families up in priority. to receive a service dog sooner when those openings come up. And also, kind of the opposite, if the current dog is doing really well and you don't really feel like we're quite ready for the successor dog, we can always push you back and wait until a time that that you are ready for that successor dog.
So we're coming up on time, but we just had one question I thought was pretty basic question. You probably have discussed it, but if you could just be a little bit more clear in terms of the aspect of the timeline. So from the beginning of being able to contact you to say our family is interested in a dog, and we understand and know we have to raise to 10K, and we have that. So from that point, how long does it take for them to get an actual dog?
Yeah, so that's a little bit dependent on the fundraising piece. So if, for example, you're a family who is able to write that $20,000 check yourself, then as soon as that check is in and processed, then you're placed in a class, and that's about 2 years. If you're a family that is not able to do that, and you are fundraising, it honestly depends on how long it takes you to fundraising. A lot of our families average 4 to 6 months to complete fundraising, but we certainly have those that we've heard of where they have just one event and they somehow manage to get it all in that one event. Others, might struggle for a while and then they get an anonymous donor to, kind of push them over the edge. So that piece all kind of varies, but once that fundraising piece is complete, that's when the timeline becomes more clear and you can estimate about 2 years from that point.
One more question. So if a child has a terminal disease, would this not, and epilepsy is a part of it, would this not be an appropriate aspect of being able to obtain a dog because of the fact that their window it might be shorter than others?
That would not be something that would impact us, at least at For Paws for Ability. Obviously, we have our timeline and we do our best on the timeline. We wouldn't be able to necessarily prioritize. So it would have to be something that would, have to be aware of and kind of being aware of the timeline that it takes to get a dog, and that process. And certainly we do our best if there are openings to move you up, but it's not something we can guarantee. But we certainly would not withhold placing a service dog if the dog could be providing service and support and help.
Thank you so much. So we are almost out of time. I want to just say thank you so much to our speakers. If we can go to the next slide, I just want to give people a few reminders. I know many of you didn't get your questions answered, so we will definitely make sure that we send the chat and the Q&A to our speakers so that they are able to look at some of those questions. We'll look at the registration in terms of trying to get some of your email addresses and try to get you some answers that way directly. If you please could give us feedback. This is, again, a topic that we know is of much interest. And so we are not, we are definitely willing, I should say, to explore it again in a different angle, but we would love to have your feedback so that we can do that appropriately. So we have put the link in the chat so that you can provide us with that feedback, but there's also a QR code on the screen. If we can go to the next slide. So again, we have put in information into the chat about how you can find your local epilepsy foundation. Please do reach out to one of our team members who is in your state, in your region, so that we can get you connected to more resources, including support groups. Next slide. And then we would love to see all of you next year at our national walk. And so as we talk about advocating, as we talk about the aspect of raising awareness, and also as we talk about the aspect of being able to band together for people to see our collective voice, that's what we're going to be doing in Washington, D.C. So please join us. We're going to be on the National Mall, hopefully, to be able to have this walk. And we also are having our Public Health Institute to be able to talk about advocating for just these particular aspects, especially in educational settings, as Shannon brought up a lot around the aspect of schools. So we'll be discussing that from March 12th through the 14th in Washington, D.C., specifically at Howard University. And then on March 15th, we will have our national walk. And then following this walk, something else that Shannon brought up in terms of Eliana being able to be a participant of it is our Teen Speak Up. And so we'll have our youth, our young adults be able to go up to Capitol Hill and talk to decision makers. So if you want to be a part of that too, please let us know because that follows our national walk. And that's going to be on March 16th through the 19th. So if we can go to the next slide. And so again, our helpline is 24/7. So if there's anything here that we discussed that you still need more assistance with and want to be connected to in your state, I know that Shannon has done a great job, and one of her other colleagues has been in the chat too, to be able to give a lot of information about what Michigan is doing. But a lot of our affiliates all over the country are doing great things too. So we would love to be able to connect you with those. So call our helpline if you need more specific help to be able to be connected to. And then last but not least, I want to make sure I again say thank you to everyone. We appreciate the 94 of you who joined us today, the 200 of you who registered overall, and we will continue to provide more information about this and other topics. So continue to watch our social media. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.